Right.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think that it's really important to work in current litigation with Shaz, so there's not much that I can talk to the specifics about decision-making process on that specific case, but I can talk more generally about how the land use plan kind of impacts zoning and the way that we have to do items that we're changing, or when the applicant is requesting change of the land use plan. So I think the land use plan is kind of a guidance document. Our zoning ordinance is really kind of the foundational bit that we're looking at. So whatever a current property is zoned, say it, be R1, which is single family residential, or, agricultural, or things like that. If the land use plan is proposing to change that, land use in future years, over time, it will kind of say they have kind of broad designations of like current urban service area or future urban service area. So if a property owner buys, something that is not currently zoned the way that they would like to, but it is in that future impact on the 2025 plan, we have to take those items first. So we take the land use plans, we have to move that into the current urban service area, and then look at the zoning ordinance to update kind of those pieces. So we take those one at a time, and I would say that, we're currently in our, working towards our comprehensive land use plan, updating that 2025 plan. I don't know what the years are going to be.
It's going to be 2045.
So then we'll have kind of a long range plan to what and how we plan to develop the city out. So I think it's an important kind of guidance document to think about, like, what we want to see coming forward, but really the foundational document on how the land can currently be used is that zoning ordinance. And so we can't do anything moving forward. Even if we changed the land use to a current service area, we would still, if it was not the same zoning that the applicant wanted, we would also have to make sure that we're updating that zoning to be in accordance to the zoning.
I know you didn't represent the city in the Flesky Holding Company case, but has the city indicated whether it intends to appeal the judge's ruling? And what is the status of the attorney fees paid by the city in this case?
In Flesky, we did hire outside counsel, but that case has been done for almost 2 years. So we appealed the judge's decision to the Oklahoma Supreme Court. They ruled in our favor, and that ended that case. I don't recall how much we spent in attorney fees on that one. As I said, we had that and Golden Tribe going at the same time with the same firm, and I want to say it was probably $130,000 total for both. They both went all the way through trial and then appeals. So they were a little bit lengthy. They crossed 2 fiscal years, I believe, with the appeals and the work done there. So we did spend some money on those. We're trying to do more of that in-house. So Shaz, we're handling that in-house with Rick Knighton, who's our litigation lead in our office. And certainly that's something we consider every time, but sometimes with workload, if he's got a lot of cases going on, he doesn't necessarily have time to take 2 cases to trial at the same time, and that was the case here in 2018.
In the case of the Sooner Traditions request, some council members cited concerns about traffic and safety as reasons for their decision to deny the request. Can you explain the basis for considering these types of concerns when making zoning decisions?
Yeah, I think that you heard Ms. Walker talk a little bit about health, safety, and wellness. These are the things that are kind of in our purview when we're considering, zoning, the way that the zoning could potentially impact the health, safety, and wellness of our residents. And those are kind of those key, key words that we have to think about. And I think traffic falls into that area really well, because if you think about impact in increased traffic in, either a corridor on a street, or the way that you can ingress or egress off of a particular property, how that changes over time, could cause, dynamics that create traffic, or they create the likelihood of, more accidents, not only for cars, but against, vehicle, against pedestrian or bikes, and the way that we have kind of our multimodal pathways. So I think it's one of the areas that we definitely have to take into consideration and make sure that, we're taking guidance from our public works department and staff members that are working on these types of things all the time. But it's certainly one of those areas that falls under health, safety, and wellness.
Can you pinpoint a reason why the city repeatedly gets sued by developers, and has this been addressed with the council on possible changes to the process of approving requests?
I think I would take issue with the statement that we repeatedly get sued. I started in 2006. We've had 1, 2, 3, 4 challenges to zoning decisions in that time that I know of. We had one maybe in 2006, but it was a neighbor suing the city after it approved a zoning application. So it doesn't happen often, and I think what councils in the last few years have struggled with is the growing stormwater problems we have, the growing traffic problems we have, and really looking more critically at developments to see what are those impacts and how will this development exacerbate that problem. And so I think that's a lot of it. Several years ago, probably 2008, 2009, somewhere around there, we amended our zoning ordinance to require a pre-development meeting of certain development applications. So all of these applications had pre-development meetings where we invited everyone within the notice area around their property to really encourage property owners, developers, and their neighbors to work out whatever issues may come up. And a lot of times that means that we don't have a lot of problems when it comes to council because they've already worked out those concerns. But it doesn't always get worked out. And so sometimes when you get to council, you're learning of negative impacts of a project that council has to consider. And certainly of late, councils have been willing to listen to those concerns and consider them when making their decisions.
You supported Councilmember Hall's objections when she stated what should we be considering is unique creative option for the future and not what has been built in the past. What did she mean by that, and do you still hold that same belief?
Can you repeat that? Sorry.
What you stated, what would she be considering is unique creative option for the future and not what has been built in the past? What did she mean by that, and do you still hold that same belief?
Sure. So I think what Councilmember Hall was talking about was the desire to see unique kind of creative projects from the development community. I can't speak to exactly kind of where she's hoping to see those projects because I'm not her, but I think that me and I would say some other council members are really hoping to see what is the vision for Norman? What do we want to see? What types of developments? Do we want to think about mixed use developments? Do we want to think about what type of retail? What are we incentivizing to come into the community, as opposed to just building the same things over and over and over again, but really being thoughtful about what are the new best practices within kind of urban development, what are potentials that could make and continue to keep Norman unique, and not just kind of rinse, repeat the same thing that we've been doing. So I think, yes, I still stand by thinking about what do we want for our community, what types of developments, what types of housing models, what types of retail and development that we want as we build out, I would say, especially as we continue to grow our community.
Yeah, and if I can just add something, Councilmember Hall talked about unique characteristics of developments and things like that often, particularly when people were asking for a rezoning to a PUD or an SPUD. Mm-hmm. There's actually language in our zoning ordinance for SPUDs and PUDs that talk about how when you use that process, it should be for something unique and special and not just a way to set out exceptions to the rules, but to really negotiate. That's really what those are for, to be a negotiation with the developer to come up with something really different and unique, not something that you would see just under a standard zoning designation. And so I've heard her make that statement several times because there's standards in those ordinances that she was always wanting to tie it back to when we have those types of requests.
Yeah, and I'll further add, I think that's a good clarification on understanding what are the limitations of, our broad zoning criteria, and that we are seeing more and more PUDs and SPUDs specifically in certain sections of town. And to, Ms. Walker's point, that a PUD and an SPUD is something unique and special, and we shouldn't just be using it to tweak, small little pieces of our zoning ordinance, but actually using it to kind of think creatively about what we're doing.
Has the fact that the city repeatedly gets sued by developers over being denied impacted the way that council approaches developer requests?
So I think you've heard Ms. Walker talk about repeated suing, and that it's, not, I think, as widespread as people might assume based on some of the outcomes or things that have happened lately. But I don't think that the way that I approach it, whenever we go into any kind of zoning change or request, I have to take each application as they come to me. I don't use, past developments or past things to kind of impact. I want to see how it comes through the process, right? We talked about that pre-development meeting. How is the developer working with, the residents? Is there residents that are concerned about what the impacts might be from this development? What is that looking like? I repeatedly go to Planning Commission so that I am actually physically there, so I can hear what is being presented to Planning Commission, the questions that our planning commissioners are asking of the applicants. What are members of our public coming? Because there's public comment also at Planning Commission. Are they bringing concerns? Are they for the proposal? Because sometimes we see support, right? Like they're excited to have whatever is coming for this change in development. And so taking each application kind of on its own merits and foundationally continuing to think about that health, safety, wellness, what are the impacts? I think that it's really important to kind of take all of those factors kind of in a holistic way. And each zoning application has its own unique challenges, and not using past problems or things that have come before us to kind of dictate what my decision is going to be.
Well, that's all my questions. Would any of you have anything to add?
I think so.
Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.